I woke up that morning with my alarm blaring like always, but even before I opened my eyes, I knew something wasn't right. My head was heavy, stomach swirling again like it had been for days. I sat up slowly, blinking through the dim light leaking from my window, the golden haze of a Georgia fall morning soft across the floor. Math test today. I had planned to study more last night, but I ended up lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to my parents argue about nothing again. The smell of coffee downstairs meant Mom was already pacing, probably flipping through her prayer book or yelling at Dad for letting the leaves pile up. I pulled on my jeans, slid into a hoodie, and paused. My hands hovered near my stomach, flat, but not right. I had been nauseous too often lately, tired beyond reason. Part of me knew, but I wasn't ready to know. Not really. I looked in the mirror and whispered, "You can't afford to be wrong about this." But deep down, I already knew. 2 nights before, while everyone else slept, I snuck into the bathroom and locked the door behind me. I had bought the test with cash, hands shaking, face burning, thinking the cashier surely knew what kind of girl I was. The second I saw those 2 pink lines, I sat on the floor and pulled my knees in. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared, feeling the walls close in. I remembered my mother's voice, loud, sharp, always quoting scripture like it was a weapon. Girls who can't keep their legs closed end up begging the world for scraps. That's what she told my cousin when she got pregnant at 16. That's what I was now, her failure, her proof that she hadn't raised me right. I slid the test under my mattress, wrapped in a sock, like hiding it made it untrue. I hadn't told Mason. I hadn't told anyone. I didn't know how. Mom found it the next afternoon. I heard her scream before I saw her, a sound like something had died. I ran up the stairs, and there she was, holding the sock like it was filth, eyes blazing with something worse than rage, disappointment. "You're disgusting!" she shrieked. "Is this what you've become? A whore under my roof?" She slapped me before I could speak. I didn't cry. I just stood there. "Who is it?" she demanded, pacing. "That Greer boy. I knew he was trouble. It's not like that. Don't lie to me." Dad stood in the hallway, one hand on the doorframe, his eyes down. He didn't say a word, not even when she said it. "You're not my daughter anymore." I opened my mouth, then shut it. Nothing would change her mind. Not facts, not tears, not even begging. She pointed to the hallway. 20 minutes. You take your filth with you. I won't have this house damned because of your choices." I started to speak again, but she slammed the door in my face. My room felt like a stranger's space after that. I grabbed a trash bag and shoved clothes in. No suitcase. No goodbye. Mason's number stared at me from my phone, but before I could call, she ripped the cord out of the wall. "You think you get to drag him down with you?" she snapped. "He's not going to save you." By the time I stepped outside, it was already dusk. I had no jacket, just a hoodie and a garbage bag slung over my shoulder. The porch light clicked off behind me. The house didn't even look like mine anymore. I passed our family photo hanging in the front hall as I left. Me at age 10 with missing teeth, Dad's awkward smile, Mom's stiff posture, arms around us like a shield. I didn't look back. The bus shelter behind McPherson's grocery was dry enough. I curled on the cold bench, wrapped in whatever hoodie I had managed to grab. Cars passed now and then, but nobody looked twice. That night, air bit through cotton and skin and bone. I clutched my stomach, unsure if it was fear or something deeper. The cramps weren't sharp, just constant, like something inside me wasn't ready to settle. Her voice echoed again. "You're not my daughter anymore." And the silence after. That's what hurt most. Not the slap, not the screaming, the fact that she meant it. I wasn't ready. I whispered it into the dark. But ready or not, this was mine now. This life. This choice. That night, I realized my mother didn't just throw me out of her house, she threw me out of her heart. The morning sun didn't warm anything. I woke up with my arms wrapped tight around my chest, trying to keep some kind of heat trapped under that thin hoodie. My body ached. My stomach churned, not from the baby, but from plain hunger. I hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. The grocery store behind me buzzed with deliveries. People walked past, eyes sliding over me like I didn't belong in their picture of the world. I stood slowly, legs stiff from the cold bench, and wandered toward the small cafe across the gas station. I knew I didn't have a dime to spend, but the smell of bacon and coffee pulled me in like a hook. I sat at the edge of the entrance, just far enough to catch warmth from inside without stepping over the line. The waitress spotted me and opened the door halfway. "Sweetheart, if you're not ordering, you can't loiter. I'm sorry, I really am." I nodded, said nothing. I walked back out and sat on the bench just outside, tucking my hands under my legs, trying not to cry. My throat was tight. I wasn't even sure if I was embarrassed anymore. Just empty. That's when I noticed the woman watching me from a blue sedan. She had white hair pulled back in a bun and big glasses that made her look like someone's sweet aunt, but her eyes were sharp. She stepped out with a cane and walked slow but steady toward me. I straightened up. "You look cold," she said softly. "Would you let me buy you a cup of something hot?" I hesitated. Everything Mom drilled into me about strangers screamed in my head. People don't help you unless they want something. But my body overruled my mind. I nodded, cautious. She didn't ask questions, just ordered 2 coffees, handed me one with a napkin wrapped around the cup. "Sit with me?" she offered, pointing to a table outside. I followed. "I'm Laverne Caldwell. Folks call me Miss Laverne." I nodded again, unsure if I should give my name. "I'm not here to pry," she added. I know what it feels like to have the whole world turn away." That hit something I didn't know I was guarding. She didn't try to fill the silence, just sipped her drink and stared out into the street like we were just 2 regular people sharing a quiet morning. "Sometimes God sends you someone when you need it most," she said after a while, "but you gotta be willing to sit at the table." The kindness in her voice didn't feel fake. It felt old, worn in, like it had survived a lot to still be standing. I loosened my grip on the coffee cup just slightly. "You got a place to stay tonight?" she asked. No judgment, just facts. I tensed. "I'm not a junkie. I'm not trouble." She smiled. "I didn't ask what you weren't. I asked if you had a roof. Big difference." I stayed quiet. "I've got a spare room," she said. "Clean sheets, locked door, no questions. Just for a few nights." I stared at her like she'd grown 2 heads. "Why?" "Because I was you once," she said. 17, scared out of my mind, and carrying something bigger than I could name. She pulled out a card and slid it across the table. Her address, written in neat cursive. "You don't have to come. Just don't let pride freeze you to death." She stood and walked back to her car. Didn't look back. I spent the rest of that day walking, nowhere in particular. Just moving so I didn't have to think. My feet were numb. I ended up near a park bench when the sky started to fade into dusk. I held the card like it was a ticking bomb. What if she was lying? What if she called someone? What if this was just another trap? But sleeping on concrete again felt worse. I found myself standing in front of a small 1-story home. White siding, yellow porch light glowing soft through the curtains. I knocked once, ready to run. The door opened and warm air spilled out like a welcome. "You came," she said, stepping aside. "Come on in." I stepped through but kept my backpack on. Just in case. Always be ready to go. A man stood in the hallway, mid-30s, quiet eyes, broad shoulders. He didn't smile, but he nodded. "I'm Noah," he said. "That's my mom." I gave a polite nod back. Dinner was already on the table. Nothing fancy, just beans and cornbread, but it smelled like comfort. I ate quietly, each bite making me feel human again. The room had photos all over. I noticed one, Miss Laverne as a teenager, holding a baby in a faded hospital gown. She caught me looking. "That's me, 17, just like you," she said. "Your eyes remind me of mine back then." Tired, but not done. I didn't know what to say. After dinner, she showed me a small room. Clean bed, soft quilt, a lamp by the side. I stood in the doorway like it was too much. "You can rest now," she said gently. I nodded. Closed the door behind me, sat on the bed but didn't take off my shoes. Couldn't. Trust didn't come that easy. Lying there in the quiet, I whispered to the dark, "Don't get used to this. You don't belong here." But the next morning, something on the kitchen table made me question everything I thought I knew about this woman. Waking up in that small guest room felt like drifting between two worlds. The ceiling was a shade of white that reminded me of childhood naps, safe, simple, but my chest still carried the weight of being unwelcome. I lay still, listening. The faint sound of birds mixed with the hum of an old pickup truck outside. Noah, probably. I caught a whiff of coffee through the cracked door. Real coffee. Not instant, not from a machine. It smelled like a morning that belonged to someone else's life. Downstairs, I heard Mrs. Caldwell humming something low and steady. I didn't know the tune, but it sounded like the kind of thing someone sings when they've seen heartache and survived it. It was steadying, in a strange way. I sat up, legs over the edge of the bed, trying to decide if I had the right to step back into that kitchen. The comfort scared me. Nothing comes for free. That voice in my head, my mother's, was already warning me. You owe everyone something. Don't forget that. I went down anyway. Slowly, every step deliberate. The kitchen was warm and smelled of bacon grease and fresh toast. On the table, next to a mug already waiting for me, sat a folded newspaper. I wasn't even fully inside the room before I saw it. My name, right there in bold black letters. Local teen Corliss Matthews accused of abandoning family property. My knees nearly buckled. I grabbed the back of the nearest chair. Mrs. Caldwell turned from the stove and saw my face. "I figured you ought to see it," she said, not unkindly. "Found it at the cafe early this morning." I stepped closer, hands shaking as I unfolded it. The story wasn't long, a few paragraphs, enough to ruin me in this town. The article claimed I'd left behind damaged household property with insinuations of theft and reckless behavior. It quoted unnamed sources. Probably my mother, maybe even Pastor Thompson. "They're already turning the town against me," I whispered. Mrs. Caldwell didn't rush in with empty comfort. She just pulled out a chair and sat. "You know what I see? A scared girl someone's trying to make disappear. Seen it before." I clutched my backpack tighter. That backpack was all I had now. If I needed to leave, I could. I wouldn't owe anyone. But I couldn't stop staring at the article. Every word felt like a slap from my mother, dressed in legalese and printed for the whole town to see. "Don't expect handouts, Corliss," my mother's voice echoed again, sharp in my head. "You'll always pay a price." I turned toward Mrs. Caldwell. "Why are you helping me, really?" She didn't blink. "Because when I was 17, a newspaper nearly cost me everything. Mine said I was promiscuous, said I was a burden. That article chased me all the way to Atlanta. Took me 10 years to come home again." She reached over and slid a folder toward me. Inside were pamphlets, a few business cards, contact numbers for shelters, legal help. I stared at it, unsure what to make of the gesture. "You don't have to take it," she said gently, "but you do need to know you've got options, more than you think." I didn't say thank you. Couldn't. It felt like admitting weakness. Later that afternoon, I sat alone in the small side yard. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the patchy grass. I stared at that article again. If they were filing things in court, they could come after me. Maybe even try to claim I was unstable, take my baby. I stood up and paced. I could leave, walk back toward the gas station, keep moving. But where? I had no money, no phone, no one to call. Mason. God, I didn't even know if he was looking for me. Mrs. Caldwell came out and stood on the porch. "You can run," she said quietly, "or you can let me help you fight." I didn't answer, but I heard it, really heard it. I stood there until the sun dipped behind the trees. The kitchen light turned on behind her. That small, warm square of light in the dark. "I'll stay one more night," I said. Inside, Noah was at the sink. He didn't look up, just slid a mug across the counter toward me. I noticed his ID badge hanging nearby. Army. Probably explains the way he moved, precise, like he was always ready to react but didn't want to. I nodded at him. He nodded back. After dinner, Mrs. Caldwell handed me a pamphlet on tenants' rights. Just because they're louder, she said, doesn't mean they're right. I held it like it was a weapon. Maybe it was. Back in the guest room, I sat on the edge of the bed, the newspaper laid out in front of me. My heart was racing, my hands cold. If they're coming for me, I whispered, I need to know why. And then, at the very bottom of the article, I saw the one name I never expected to see. My mother's attorney. Dusk in that town always felt heavier than daylight. I sat on the porch, knees pulled up, a cheap spiral notebook open on my lap. Mrs. Caldwell had told me to start writing things down, said it helped keep the noise inside from taking over. I stared at the blank page, pen hovering, but my head was too loud. Out beyond the yard, cicadas started their evening chorus. The air smelled like wet pine and gasoline from a passing truck. For a second, I almost felt steady. Then a knock rattled the gate. Sharp, quick, like someone who didn't want to be caught there. I stood up slowly, pushing my notebook aside. A boy on a bike, couldn't have been more than 14, waited at the edge of the fence. He didn't meet my eyes. He just held out an envelope like it was something burning. For you, he mumbled, and pedaled off before I could say a word. The envelope was plain, no return address, but heavy in my hand. My stomach turned. Inside was a letter folded neatly, the kind of paper that smells like lawyers. My name typed in bold at the top. Mrs. Caldwell came out, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Everything all right? I didn't answer. I already knew it wasn't. I tore it open. Legal words swam up at me. Vacate. Cease contact. Unauthorized access to private belongings. It was signed by my mother's attorney. They were telling me to leave Mrs. Caldwell's house. They're saying I'm the threat now, I said out loud, my voice cracking. Mrs. Caldwell took the letter, slid on her glasses, read in silence. Her mouth tightened. They're laying a trap, she said softly. Noah was leaning against the porch rail, arms crossed. He glanced at the paper. Classic diversion play, he muttered. Accuse her before she can speak up. I wanted to laugh, but nothing came out. The next line hit harder than the rest. Endangering the well-being of minor sibling Etta Matthews. I saw Etta's face in my mind, her sneaking me leftovers when Mama wasn't looking, her whispering, I'm on your side, through the crack in my bedroom door. My throat closed. They're using her, I said, slamming the letter down on the porch rail, twisting it all. What if Etta really is hurt now? My inner voice whispered. Because you left? I pressed my palms into my eyes. Do they think I'll crawl back? That I'm still scared of them? Mrs. Caldwell placed a hand on my shoulder. They want you to lose your cool. Don't give them what they want. I should call. Go down there. Something, I said. But even as I spoke, something in me paused. The anger was real, but so was the trap. I picked the letter up again, forcing myself to read it slowly this time. In the third paragraph, I caught a line about temporary injunction, a phrase Mrs. Caldwell pointed at. That's not enforceable without a filing, she murmured. And there isn't one yet. They're bluffing. A spark flickered in me. Strategy. Maybe I didn't have to be the scared girl this time. Maybe I could fight. Inside, the kitchen smelled like cornbread. I sat at the table, pulled my notebook toward me, and started writing down every word of the letter. Dates, times, clauses, anything that might matter. They won't rewrite my story this time, I said under my breath. Mrs. Caldwell nodded, went to a drawer, pulled out a flyer for a local legal aid center. First thing tomorrow, she said. Noah walked in quietly and set a small voice recorder on the table next to me. You might need to start documenting everything, he said. His voice was low, but steady. For the first time in days, I felt the tiniest bit of ground under me. I had allies. I looked at them both. This war they started? I whispered. It won't end the way they think. Later that night, after the dishes were washed and the house had gone still, I walked past the kitchen on my way to the guest room. The answering machine's red light blinked. A new voicemail. I pressed play. A woman's voice came through, sweet and syrupy, claiming to be from social services. But underneath the tone, I heard the threat clear as day. The sun had barely started to push through the blinds when I sat on the edge of the bed, playing that voicemail again. I knew the voice already. Sweet, almost syrupy, like someone pretending to be your friend while sliding a knife between your ribs. "We understand your situation, Miss Matthews, but we have concerns for the unborn child and for Evelyn's safety." Evelyn. They called Etta Evelyn. My jaw clenched. Nobody from my family would call her that, not unless they were reading from something someone else wrote. That wasn't a real social worker. Mrs. Caldwell stood by the doorway, arms folded. Ain't no licensed worker in this state who would leave a voicemail like that, especially not threatening to remove your baby before you've even had a court hearing. She didn't have to say more. I saw it clear now. They weren't waiting on the system. They were trying to make me run before I could even stand. "They're trying to break me before I even stand up," I whispered, clutching the phone. And for a minute, they almost did. Later that morning, Mrs. Caldwell drove us into town. I didn't say much on the way, just held that letter and the little cassette recorder Noah had given me like they were shields. The legal aid office was small, tucked between a pharmacy and a dry cleaner. The kind of place most folks walked past 100 times and never noticed. But inside, everything changed. There was a woman in a gray sweater flipping through case folders at the front desk. She glanced up. "You hear about a voicemail?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "You're not the first." She didn't smile. Turns out she worked for real social services. She checked the number. "This isn't ours. This is spoofed. Whoever called you was pretending." My stomach turned. I looked over at Mrs. Caldwell, whose face didn't flinch. We were led to the back, where a young woman named Jess sat behind a desk with a chipped coffee mug and a tired face. "I'm not licensed yet," she said, "but I can help you draft a statement. What have you got?" I slid the letter, my journal, and the cassette toward her. Jess looked them over, her brows furrowing deeper with each page. "We need to get ahead of this. You can't just survive this. You can beat it." It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said it. And for the first time in too long, I believed someone. Back home, I sat at the dining table. The light came in through the window, catching dust in the air. Everything felt still, except my hands. They shook a little, but I held the pen tight. I started from the beginning. Not the day I ran, but long before that. Mama's silence at dinner when I asked too many questions. The locked drawer she thought I never noticed. The way she'd call it discipline when she slammed the Bible down next to my bed like it was law. Mrs. Caldwell brought tea. Noah set a stack of blank cassettes on the table and walked away without a word. I took the recorder and pressed record. "My name is Corliss May Devereaux," I said into the mic, "and this is my side of the story. If they're going to twist it, I want the truth louder than their lies." Later that evening, I sat on the floor, flipping through my old notebook. A note from Etta slipped out, a scrap of lined paper with one sentence scrawled in pencil. "I miss you. Please don't forget me." The guilt hit hard, sharp, like maybe by leaving, I'd left her behind too. Mrs. Caldwell sat across from me, holding her own cup of tea. "When I was 17, she said, "I had to walk away from my father. He was the kind of man who made you believe pain was love. I left so my brothers could see it didn't have to be that way." "Did they understand?" I asked. "Eventually," she said. "After the house got quiet without me in it." I folded Etta's note and slid it into my journal, not to forget her, but to remember why I had to fight. That night, I stepped outside and stood by the fire pit. The legal envelope shook in my hand. I stared at it for a long time. Then I dropped it into the flame and didn't look away as it curled, blackened, and turned to ash. Inside, I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror. Same face, same freckles, but something in my eyes had shifted. "They want the old me," I said to my reflection. "The silent girl who never questioned anything. She's gone." I picked up the draft I'd written, a letter to the editor at the local paper. A simple telling of my side. Not to win sympathy, but to shine light where they thought I'd hide. I posted it on the fridge. Mrs. Caldwell stood behind me, nodding slowly. Her hand brushed the magnet beside it. "Well-behaved women rarely make history," it read. I turned off the lights. And that's when I saw them, headlights pulling into the driveway. I stepped outside that morning and froze. Newspapers were stacked at my door, folded, pressing into the welcome mat as if someone shoved them there to make me see. I knelt, peeling the top one up. There it was, my face, blown up, eyes wide and hollow under a headline screaming, "Corliss Devereaux, danger to self, danger to others." My heart thundered, hands shook. I called Mrs. Caldwell. She answered. I held the paper to the phone. Together, we read the twisted version of my life. The article claimed I was unstable. Anonymous sources said I screamed at neighbors, threatened children, stormed into her house uninvited. A narrative of chaos. The facts distorted. When she said, "They're trying to drown you in lies," Noah stood behind her, silent, arms tight at his sides. A knock came. A reporter stood on the porch with a camera and mic, blocking my exit path. "Are you okay? Do you have help?" he asked, voice heavy with implication. I stared. "I'm a person, not a story," I told him. He smiled thinly, said he'd follow up tomorrow, then walked away. But the air felt heavier after he left. I could feel the sting of someone else's narrative spread across town faster than I could walk. Inside, Mrs. Caldwell and Noah whispered. I heard words I didn't want to. Gossip, rumors, justice turned into rumor mills. She urged calm. Don't speak in anger. They want a meltdown. But I burned inside. Why was I the one who always looked violent? I demanded the source of the anonymous quote. The paper wouldn't tell. To protect confidences, they said. Later, at the corner store, familiar folks stared coldly. Someone whispered to my sister, loud enough. I heard she yelled at children at the town hall. My chest clenched. In the online town forum, I posted a short note. I won't let lies rewrite my story. Mrs. Caldwell saw tears form in my eyes. She didn't flinch. That evening, we gathered documents, old teacher commendations, letters from people who knew me before this. Noah brought proof, past newspapers showing that reporter's office had misquoted others before. I recorded a statement in my own voice, calm, clear, and posted it in the local forum, forcing people to read me, not someone else's version of me. That night, I checked my phone. The comment section exploded with accusations, claims I'd never made. I pulled into the church parking lot early, the gray sky looming above low. My palms sweated on the steering wheel. I hadn't walked through those doors in years, years of avoiding, of feeling hollow. I looked down the long walk to the steeple, the wind stirring dry leaves. Mrs. Caldwell followed behind, and Noah trailed just a few steps back. Nothing about this felt easy. Inside, whispers curled like smoke. My name was already on people's lips. A woman near the back leaned toward Trudy May, loud enough for me to hear. Is that your real niece? Etta sat beside her, eyes wide. Confusion flickered across her face. My chest tightened. That whisper was a knife. I forced myself to reach out and grip Etta's hand. Ignore them, honey, I said softly, though my voice trembled. My mind drifted to the many times Mom lectured about family purity and who belongs. Those words felt like locks on my throat. Midway through the sermon, Verna stood up. The congregation quieted. She swayed slightly and then spoke, strong, loud. I wish you would stop believing the lies of a runaway daughter, she said. She betrayed us all. She looked straight at me. Cast out at her own choosing, she took advantage of kindness. She walked away willingly. Silence slammed into me. The church lights shone through stained glass, casting colored patterns across her face. I felt my world tilt. She was rewriting decades of truth with her voice in that pulpit. I stood. All the anger I'd tucked away boiled up. My throat ached, but I lifted it. You can't rewrite me in front of them, I said, voice low but hard. I told my truth. I told how she forced me out, how I wandered afraid, how I struggled and saved, standing on trembling feet. I pointed to Etta. This child is my responsibility, not your weapon. Murmurs spread. Some gasped. Some shook their heads. Trudy May's face drained of color. Verna's lips tightened tight, her control slipping. The pastor cleared his throat and wrapped up the sermon. The service ended in a hush heavier than the silence before. People filed out slowly. Some avoided looking at me. Some stared. Etta tucked close. Trudy May slipped past, refusing to meet my eyes. Noah stepped forward and offered his arm. I took it. Mrs. Caldwell caught my side and whispered, "You just broke their mirror. They'll never see themselves the same way again." My legs felt weak and strong at once. I carried exhaustion and vindication. As we walked toward the car, Trudy May dropped a folded piece of paper into my hand. My fingers curled around it. I felt the edges of the paper, but didn't look yet. 3 words. They froze my spine. I stood on the porch of Verna's house, again, same brick, same windows. But something in me had shifted. The last time I came here crying, she shut the door in my face. This time, I wasn't begging. I was claiming. Mrs. Caldwell walked beside me, her steady presence grounding me. Noah followed, silent but strong. I could hear the faint ticking of a wind chime swinging near the doorway. Trudy May opened the door with a forced smile. It barely reached her eyes. "Mom's in the den," she muttered, stepping aside. I looked into that house, the one where I'd grown up, learned how to walk, then later, how to tiptoe around truth. But now, I stepped in, shoulders back. Today wasn't about asking. It was about stating what should have never been taken. Jess, our attorney, was already seated with a stack of folders. She opened one and tapped a deed with her pen. We traced every filing, every transfer. "Corliss, the property, this house, and the business you were part of, it's still legally yours. The signatures Verna filed, invalid." I reached for the paper. My name was there, line after line. I read them out loud. My hands shook slightly, but my voice didn't waver. Verna sat stiffly on the armrest, lips pressed. "You think you can just read me out of my own home?" "You wrote me out of my life," I replied. "You forged your way into something that wasn't yours. That wasn't love. That was theft." The room held its breath. Mrs. Caldwell pulled out a small recorder. Old, dusty. She clicked it on. Verna's voice crackled through, low, harsh, unmistakable. "Just remove her name. Don't ask questions. She doesn't deserve that land." Verna's head snapped up. "That was taken out of context." Jess spoke softly. "You altered a legal trust." Trudy May looked like she'd been slapped. Her mouth parted, but nothing came out. "You told us it was to protect the family," I said, facing my sister. "It wasn't. It was to erase me." The silence between us stretched thin. There was a knock at the door. A courier handed me a sealed envelope. I recognized the handwriting. Hoyt. My breath caught. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. No embellishment. Just the truth. "I wanted to stay," it read. "But your mother's lawyers said I'd destroy your life if I did. They told me to disappear. I was young. I was scared. And I'm sorry." I let the words linger, then read them out loud. Verna flinched, just a bit, but enough. The shame passed through her face like a passing cloud, then hardened again into bitterness. "You pushed him away. You kept secrets. You lied. And you told the world I was the danger," I said. Jess stood, pulling out final papers. "We're filing to nullify all fraudulent transfers." "And Verna," she placed the papers down like a gavel, "we're submitting evidence for a criminal complaint." Verna leaned forward. "We can settle. Quietly. No need to burn it all down." "No," I said, calm and certain. "No more secrets. If I let this stay in the dark, it keeps eating women like me alive." Noah moved beside me, hand on my shoulder. I wasn't fighting for permission anymore. I was fighting so no one else would have to. Then, outside, the bell from the old church rang. One slow, deep toll. I checked my watch. It was the hour the court hearing began. The courthouse steps felt heavier than I imagined. Cold stone under my shoes, morning air sharp with the smell of rain. I paused at the doors, looking at the brass handles I'd only seen from afar as a girl. Back then, they stood for something unreachable. Rooms where decisions were made about people like me. Never by people like me. Now, I pushed them open myself. Mrs. Caldwell walked just behind me, her hand brushing my arm once. Silent reassurance. Noah was at my other side, posture straight, eyes scanning the hallway like a watchman. In the gallery, I saw Verna and Trudy May already seated. Verna's smile was fixed, a mask. Trudy May's eyes flickered. Guilt? Or just fear? The judge entered and called the session to order. The sound of the gavel echoed like a thunderclap inside my chest. I straightened my back. This was not another ambush. This was my moment. Verna's attorney went first, her voice like a knife. Your Honor, my client is the victim of character defamation, property fraud, and reckless misrepresentation by her daughter, Corliss Matthews. Each word landed heavy, like stones being thrown. But I sat still. Jess rose beside me, calm and measured, and laid the documents out. Deeds, recordings, Hoyt's letter. This case, she said, is about a woman whose legal rights were stolen from her under the guise of family loyalty. We bring proof. I clenched my hands under the table. Years of silence sat in my throat, pressing to come out. Then, the bailiff called my name. I stood, walked to the stand, palms dry but heart thudding. In my hand was the echo letter. A piece of paper I'd written to myself at 15, hidden in an old Bible. I exist, I began, my voice barely audible. I matter. You can try to erase me, but I am not gone. I lifted my eyes. I am still here. The courtroom went silent. Even the clerk stopped typing. My voice grew steadier as I read. Each sentence felt like a rope thrown from that past girl to the woman I am now. I finished with a breath that felt like a door opening. Verna stood abruptly. She's lying. That recording is fake. She's ambitious. She always wanted more than she deserved. Trudy May shifted in her seat, eyes glistening. Mrs. Caldwell rose without waiting for permission. Your Honor, I was there when she said those words. That recording is genuine. Verna's shoulders sagged. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. No script left to follow. The judge shuffled papers, looked over glasses. The evidence speaks for itself. His gavel struck once. Fraudulent transfers are reversed. Defamation claim dismissed. This court recognizes Ms. Corliss Matthews as rightful owner of disputed property. I didn't cry right then, not in front of them. But I felt the sting behind my eyes. Release, not sorrow. Verna sat frozen, lips trembling, powerless. Trudy May stared at her lap. I turned to Mrs. Caldwell, who gave a small nod. Noah offered me a quiet, proud smile. Jess closed her folder. When I stepped out of the courthouse, the rain had stopped. The sun broke through clouds, pale but steady. A reporter's voice cut across the steps. Will you ever forgive your mother? I paused. The question hung in the air like a bell still ringing.